This video was shot in the second morning because you can see it's a clearer day, but I thought I'd let you see where we were shooting from, which was up in the trees the day before, just shooting from here looking down towards the viaduct. And you can see with the surrounding scenery and Loch Shiel that it's a stunning place to visit with stunning scenery. So I hope you enjoy the edit of this image. Okay, this is the Hogwarts Express. This is the Jacobite train and it's engine number 5 that we are looking at here. As you saw from the intro there, that's the scene that you have when you walk up to this. You walk up from a car park away down here, walk up through here and then come up. And there is a crowd of people there always is. This shot here was taken from a slightly different angle and we were in the trees for this one. It's similar to the image I'm going to put on now. In fact, it's the image prior to that. You'll notice that the train has moved ever so slightly. So what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to show you what I did to edit it. It won't look exactly the same, but what I did to edit it in Luminar to get there. But first of all, I started in Lightroom and then took it into Luminar. So from the screen here, you can see a couple of the edits that I did for this. And if I bring it down here, I also did a guided perspective control for this one because of where we were and the angle we were shooting it at, just to bring it up more vertical. As you can see by the histogram, you can see the details and how this was shot. ISO 800 70mm at f8 at 250th of a second, and if you look up here in the background you can see the fog that's there and that just added to it for that day. If I zoom in, you should be able to see some of the noise that's created there. But to be honest, noise does not bother me one bit for these kind of images because it's what you get from the image once you've edited it. Sometimes the noise can add, but that noise as well, it was raining when we were here. As you can see by the train, the roof of the train looks slightly wet. What I'll do now is I'll dive into Luminar from Lightroom and show you how I edited the image. Okay, that's us in Luminar now, and most of my edits I do against a white background, but I understand watching this on a TV it might not look the same, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the background colour, and I'm just going to get into a light grey for this. You can see there that if you right click on it, you've got different options there. I find that if you edit against a white, and depending on what kind of monitor you have, when you send it away to the printers, following all their instructions, you get back what you've sent. So that, using the white, lets you see roughly the tonal value, the colour value, the saturation and everything when you are editing that. So I'm going to go back to light grey just for this, for the sake of the video. Right, let's dive right in with this. First thing I am going to do is I am going to get into AI Enhance. So I'm going to push the accent AI. First thing I'm going to do is go into AI Enhance. So I'm going to push the AI accent just to a point where I'm quite happy with it, and that for me is just fine there. I'm then going to get into the AI structure and I'm going to lift that slightly, not too much, because there's some areas within this that I don't want the structure really to be applied to it. And because of that, what I'm going to do is get into the brush and I'm just, instead of erasing it because it's a global edit and it applies it to the full image, I'm just going to paint in the areas that I want the AI structure to be applied to. So I'm going to do it quite liberally. I'm just going to go over here, over the train, and it's mainly the foreground elements for this. It probably would have been easier to erase the background, but for this and this type of edit, it's, to be honest, it's 6 1/2 dozen. So I'm going to leave it at that. And this won't be the entire edit, the complete edit. I'll try and get it to where I was with the other one, but I took my time with that one. So that's me, I've got that there. Colour-wise, I'm not going to do just now. I'm going to get into the details enhancer. And again, without copying a mask this time, I'm just going to push the small details slightly to around there. And then I'm going to go edit mask, brush, and again, I'm going to paint in the small details. And this isn't going to be everywhere. I'm selectively applying it to certain areas. I don't want that because it's slightly out of focus, but I definitely want the train and the viaduct itself. So I'll just go over that quite liberally again. The background to this, I'm not too bothered with. So it doesn't matter if I actually apply it, and I'll take it to there as well. So what we started with, I'll click done. What we started with was that, and within a few quick minutes, we have this. So you can see how the image is beginning to come together now. Next thing, I'm going to get into the landscape enhancer. Right, if I go into dehaze, I'll lose some detail up here, but I'll also bring in some detail down here because it's a global edit, and I'm okay with that because if I pull it back, you'll see that the mist is leading us up to a light area, and what I want our focus to be here. So I am going to add the dehaze just to about there. You'll see what I'm going to do later on with that one as well. Golden hour, I'm not going to touch. Vignette, I'm not going to touch just now. I'm also going to go into dramatic. And for the dramatic, I'm just going to pull it slightly. And again, what I'm actually doing is I'm building up sharpness in certain areas. The dramatic one seems to add contrast within the image, but you'll notice what it's done to the smoke. If I turn that on and off, you'll see that there's a very slight variation in the smoke that I'm not too happy with, so I'm not going to add it to the smoke. Again, brush, and I'm just going to paint it into the areas that I want it. So we're in here, we're in there, and just around there. Not too bothered about anywhere else just now, because the train is the main focus of this, so the more detail that I manage to add to that, the better it's going to look. Anything else within here doesn't bother me at the moment. I am now going to get into the portrait, and I'm going to add a slight Orton effect. Now this may not be the order that when I originally edited this that it was done in. I'm just recollecting the ones that I used for it, and as again we can shift these into any point at all and we can do them in any order whatsoever, because as you notice I've actually been painting in where I want the effects to be applied. So I'm going to add the Orton in there. I'm going to push it quite a bit just to see what it does. So the Orton itself, if I flick that on and off, you'll notice that again that it darkens the image slightly and adds more contrast to it as well. So I'm going to go with that, but I'm going to remove it from certain areas. Or in this case, I'm going to only paint it into certain areas because of the type of image it is. So I'm going to add a slight Orton in here, but not everywhere. A slight Orton down here. Basically what I'm doing is I'm just balancing up the image visually for me, just to see where it's going to take me. I'm not being over dramatic with this. I like the desaturated colours in my original edit, so I'll be getting to that in a moment. And I'm going to leave it at that just now. So as I mentioned, the desaturated colours. For this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new layer because I may pull them back. So I'm going to go in and add a new adjustment layer. And within this adjustment layer, I'm going to go straight away into colours, and I'm going to play around with the colours. So for me, a greens, I'm going to pull the saturation back in the greens, just to get that kind of earthy tone to it. So it's quite nice there, but I also want that more earthy tone because it's the Highlands of Scotland. The hue, I may shift slightly. Yep, that's beginning to come together quite nicely. So you see how quickly this edit can come together. The yellows, I'm just going to check to see what happens here because I don't want them too emphasised. I want your eyes to see them and I want your eyes to notice them, but I don't want it to overpower the rest of the image. So I'm going to pull them back slightly again. Luminance I'll leave. The hue, if I move it, I can make it more golden, which is working as well. And then overall, what I can do is I can get into the saturation and pull the saturation back. So that again is desaturating it obviously, but it's beginning to build the full image up. If I go for the before and after, you can see the difference straight away. And actually when they do that quite quickly, you can see where the masks have been painted as well. So you can see where the effects are coming into play. It's taken away that vibrant green for me and then left me with that colour, which I feel, those colours, that I feel are more dramatic for this image. So I'll continue with what I'm doing. I'm going to leave everything there just now. The next thing I am going to do is go into the Pro panel. And I'm going to get into dodge and burn. And this is, although it's going to again be subtle, it's going to help bring the image in together. So I'm going to get into start painting. And for me, I'm going to take the strength right down. I'm just going to have a try at 9%, and it's at lighten at the moment. So I'll just do that. I'm going to take the brush size down, and I'm going to paint in there, and then in here. So you may notice a slight difference with the lightening of this, but not too much. We don't want it to be overpowering. I'm also going to go over some areas in these trees just to pick out the odd area. And as I say, I'm doing this quite quick for the sake of this video. When I did it originally, I did take my time with it, but it's just to let you see. That down there might be too much because I feel as if it's pulling my eye into that too much because of the contrast. So I'm going to erase that one and leave that quite subdued in there. The next thing is I am going to zoom in. And I'm still on lighten. I'm now going to emphasise the top. I'm on erase, sorry. I'm going to go back to lighten, and now I'm going to emphasise the top of the actual carriages themselves. And again, subtly. We don't want to overpower this at all. When I originally did this, I used my tablet to do it, but at the moment, I am using the mouse to do it. So we have that going round there, and that line there leads us right off the edge of the frame. So I'm going to stop it a bit there because it does get quite light. Catch it in there. Might be too much. I'm going to step that back. And then I am going to power this up slightly. Probably the wrong choice of words, but I'm going to get and pick out a wee bit more detail. And I'm not drawing it over everywhere. I'm just using it in certain areas to highlight certain elements of it. That one may be a mistake, but we'll wait and see. Let's go over the top of the train as well, over here. Now, I know at the back of this, we could lighten that as well, but that's already taken care of because of the image, so I don't want to get in and do that one just now. I'm going to zoom back out. I'm on a PC, so Control and 0. If you're on a Mac, Command and 0. So I'm going to show you the before and after. I'm going to click done here before I use the darken. So there's the before, there's the after. So you can see just those few things that we have done draw your eye in even further towards that train. I'm now going to go back in to the start painting of the dodge and burn, and I am going to go darken. And this one I'm definitely taking back. I'll take it back to about 3 or 4%. 5, let's go for 5, right? And I need to be careful with this one because if I just click there, I only want to emphasise certain areas of the steam coming out, and 5 might be too much. So we'll just wait and see. Very fortunate with the conditions when we were up here shooting this, because it allowed us, there is slight, you can see it's not clipped, but there is quite a few white highlights in here, although not clipped, so I can get away with it for this image. So I'm just painting in the darker recesses of this smoke just to emphasise it, because it is one of the main parts of the train, a steam train now, so we've got that. Again, if I cycle that on and off, I'll click done, and then I'll go back and check it. So you can see how that's lifted the smoke even subtly there. Or I keep saying smoke, you can see how it's lifted the steam even subtly there. Right, we're nearly done with this. The last thing for me, and I jump into my layers here, because I like editing with layers for these types of images. And what I'm going to do now is I am going to add a vignette and then paint that in certain areas as well. So if I go in here and go into the essentials and go down to vignette, I'm going to drag this back quite a bit and let's see what it does to the image. Quite happy with that, but for me, vignettes need to be used very, very carefully. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull that back. I don't mind adding a second layer and putting a second vignette in as well. That for me is better. If I turn that on and off, that's better because the darker foreground allows you to lead your eye into the lighter area, which is the steam here. And that's one of the reasons I used the dehaze, because if I hadn't used the dehaze, we weren't getting any depth in the image. So we now have more depth within this image. I'm going to try a second vignette on this. So I'm going to add another adjustment layer. I'm going to go back in to the vignette and I'm going to add a second vignette. Now it's going to darken the foreground elements and the back. But what I'm going to do is remove it from the back. And because this isn't a separate layer, it means I can go in and add a gradient mask. Drag the gradient mask down to where I'm quite happy. Say about there. And then I'll just OK that for that. Close that down. And then what I'll do is I'll flick that on and off to see if I prefer the effect. I think it's just a touch too much, so I'm going to go back into Edit Mask, back into the gradient, drag it down a little further just to pull it out even more. Flick that on and off. That's looking a bit better for me. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into my layers and I'm going to lessen the amount because the only thing on that layer is that vignette. So I'm going to lessen the amount slightly. Just to around there. Before, after, before, after. So you can see those subtle edits just help complete that image. It's the best way I can say it. And hopefully you enjoyed that and hopefully it lets you see just different ways of editing images. I really enjoy using the layers and I enjoy editing images like this. I desaturated the colours for this one because I feel it gives more effect. So when you're editing, it's a case of you're trying to bring out what you wanted to see in the image. For me, Scotland is a lovely place, but during the winter months it's quite dreich. So being able to go and shoot that for the first time and for it to be completely dreich conditions was absolutely brilliant. With the mist coming down over the hills, we had the rain. It was just light rain, but it was constant. The dogs were absolutely soaked when we left, so were we and so was the cameras, but it was fun to shoot. The train itself slows down as it comes over the bridge, but not too much because it needs to get to Mallaig where it's going. But the driver waves to you and all the passengers wave, and you can see actually the passengers taking photographs of the people taking photographs of the train itself, which is quite ironic to a point. But it's worth visiting. If you ever visit it, if you ever get the chance, it is worth going. Go up early. Definitely go up early. As I say, we caught this about 10 to 11 in the morning. So it's worth checking the times and worth checking the times when it passes over the viaduct. You get two shots at it during the day. One is around, it's the time we went. We were about there about 10 to 11. Both mornings we went, 2 mornings. The second morning though, it was better weather and the images for me I didn't think were as good as this one. It didn't suit the mood and the atmosphere. And then the second time in the day is at 3 PM or around that time. So if you ever get the opportunity to go half an hour beforehand and disappear up into the trees or find a different vantage point. Because if you shoot from there's quite a few vantage points though, but if you shoot from the vantage point where everybody else is, you might have a head in front of you or you might have people just to the side and you're going to have to Photoshop them out. And I mean, there's a lot of people going to photograph it. So it's worth, and it's lovely to see the kids going up as well just because of all the Harry Potter films. A wee tip though, if you do go up and you are setting up and you're hoping no one comes near you when you're wanting to take your shot, set your tripod up in front of you. Even put the camera on it. These are all handheld. Put the camera on it and set your tripod up in front of you. Everybody is very amiable anyway, but you won't get someone standing directly in front of you if you've got your tripod set up. Before the train came, I released the camera from the tripod and handheld the shots. It did work for this. You are on a slope anyway, but now and again you may have someone's head appearing in here or whatever, because everybody's looking for a great vantage point and everybody's looking for a different vantage point as well. I hope you enjoyed this and I hope you enjoyed the different intro at the beginning. That's not the videos because, as I said, I wasn't planning on doing any. I just thought I'd let you see the location for this edit anyway. Thanks again for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and remember, stay safe and I'll see you in the next video.